Fast, right, and cheap. You can have two of those, but not all three. That's what we're talking about on this episode of the Driving with Rob podcast. If you're a contractor, or if you're hiring a contractor, you have to keep the FRC principle in mind. Fast, right, and cheap. You as a customer can get two of those things, but you're not going to get all three. And I'll talk about that more in detail in just a minute. First of all, I just want to say that I got a message from my son, John, who is a listener of the podcast, and he listens on a regular basis, him and his wife. And he sent me a message the other day and said, this new microphone that you bought is not working. It is working. It's just not working as well as I wanted it to. It seems to add compression to my voice, and if you're not a voice person, or if you're not a audio person, you don't know what that means. But anyway, it has to do with the sound quality. It's not as clear. It's not as natural as natural voice is when you add compression to it. So anyway, I have switched back to the microphone I was using, and I'm sure John will let me know if the sound quality is better on this one than it was the last two episodes where I used my brand new microphone. And fortunately, I didn't spend a fortune for that microphone. It was supposed to be as good a quality as the higher priced ones, but apparently it adds compression. But anyway, let's get back to the topic for today. Fast, right, and cheap. I am a contractor, so I completely relate to this concept, but I have also hired contractors, so I know exactly what it means. I'd actually seen this on a TikTok video, I think it was a TikTok video, of a contractor who said, when hiring a contractor, 3 things to keep in mind: fast, right, and cheap. You can get any 2, but you're never going to get all 3. And there's a reason for it. So let's start with fast and right. Well, you want it done fast. A lot of people that call a contractor, they want it done yesterday, because everybody believes they're the only customer you have, and are appalled by the concept that they have to wait to get something done. They want it done yesterday. They want it done right now. I wouldn't have called you if I didn't need it done right now. Well, you can get it fast and you can get it done right, but it ain't going to be cheap. Because if it's done right, meaning that it will pass code, let's use that as our rule of thumb as to what right means. It is up to code. It is code compliant. It will pass inspection. You can get it done right, and you can get it done fast. But to get it done fast and right, that means I'm going to have to hire people. Somebody's going to have to help me. Well, if I've got somebody helping me, then I have to pay them. I have to pay my helper or my employee as a contractor. If I put 5 guys on it, you're going to get charged 5 man hours per hour instead of 1. And if you're not a contractor or have never done payroll or estimating or anything like that, man hours: 1 man, 1 hour. 2 men is double. 3 men is triple per hour. So you take any job, you can throw enough guys at it and you can get it done, but it's going to cost you more. You can get it fast and right, but it won't be cheap. What if I want it done fast and cheap? We can do that, but it ain't going to be right. Because in order to do it fast and cheap, we got to cut cost somewhere. So if we're cutting cost, we're going to use cheaper materials, maybe not necessarily approved methods, or we're going to have to cut corners somewhere, because you wanted it fast and cheap. It'll be fast and cheap, but it may not be code. It may not be up to code. It may not pass inspection, but I can do it fast and cheap. but don't expect an inspector to pass it. See, that's the second one. Fast and cheap won't necessarily be right. All right, what's your third option? I want it right and I want it cheap. Well, if you want it right and cheap, it ain't going to be quick. It ain't going to be fast. Because if it's right, up to code, all the I's dotted, all the T's crossed, up to code, will pass inspection, and you want it done cheap. Okay, that means I'm probably working by myself. If you want it done cheap, I can't afford to hire a helper. Again, you look at the cost per man hour. If it's one man, it'll be cheaper than it would be with two men. But if only one guy is working on it, it's probably not going to be fast. I'll give you an example. In my own life, I hired a heating and air contractor. My heating and air unit went out. At the beginning of summer, the first hot snap we had, my outdoor compressor unit, the compressor just went out. And I could probably get the compressor replaced and it would be cheaper. But if you put a brand new compressor on this 20-year-old system, it's probably going to develop a leak because the rest of the coils and coolant lines were 20 years old. So I decided I was going to have to replace the entire unit. I wasn't happy about it, but it had to be done. So I called 3 different contractors. 2 of the guys I knew. The other guy was a guy that I sort of knew, but not really. Well, 2 of the guys quoted me about the same price. The most expensive guy said I can start it tomorrow or the next day. In the next 2 to 3 days, I can start this project and get it fixed for you. The other guy said, one day this week, I can definitely get to it and have it finished by the end of this week. But then the third guy, and this was one of the guys that I did know, he said, I can do it for this price, which was substantially cheaper than the other 2 guys. But it'll be next week before I can get out there. So I told him, why don't you come by, take a look at the unit, and go ahead and give me a firm price. And he came out and he looked at it and he gave me a price, which was basically what he had quoted me over the phone, and said, but it's just me and my son, and we are very, very busy these days. So it'll be next week before I can get back out here. A week from Thursday, actually. And this was back in May. Well, it hadn't gotten really, really hot yet in May. And we were actually looking at some unseasonably comfortable temperatures in May. So I went ahead and went with the cheaper option, knowing full well going in that it would be done right because I knew this guy and I knew his reputation. He was substantially cheaper than the other guys, but it wasn't going to be fast. He said, I think we can do it in one day. He said, I don't see why we can't do it in one day. But it's going to be one day next week. These other guys were more expensive. And I have no doubt it would have been done right. But it wasn't going to be cheap. Fast, right, and cheap. You can have any 2 of those. But nobody gets all 3. And that's going to do it for this episode of the podcast. I appreciate you downloading. Thanks for listening. And again, like I've said on the last 2 podcast episodes, trying to be non-political because there are plenty of people, plenty of podcasts done by people much more knowledgeable than me. That's not to say I don't have an opinion. I just try to not talk about politics. But if you like the podcast, share it with friends. Tell your friends about it because if you like it, they probably will too. Just Google it, the Driving with Rob podcast, and you'll find it. But thanks again. I really do appreciate you. And I'll talk to you next time. Bye now.